This is Ag Matters PM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, brought to you by the Iowa Soybean Association, your daily recap of the information that affects Iowa's farmers, producers, and consumers, right here in the heart of the heartland. With reports from our award-winning broadcast team of Dustin Hoffman, Riley Smith, and Mark Magnuson. Now, from the IARN studios in Des Moines, here's Dustin Hoffman.
Well, good day, everyone, and welcome to Ag Matters PM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. I'm Dustin Hoffman. Today is Tuesday, November the 26th, 2024, just 2 days away from Thanksgiving. We're so glad you could join us here today. Coming up a little later on in the program, we'll run down the closing numbers and get analysis from Sam Trainor of agmarket.net. But first, let's catch up with Iowa Ag Secretary Mike Naig and talk about what he's seen as Harvest 24 wraps up in Iowa. I get it. I'll laugh like he'll like, hey, Al Pacino, how's it going? But now it's gotten where it's Scarlett Johansson, and I'm like,
that doesn't quite
flattered, but I don't see it.
Doesn't quite pull through, does it?
Yeah, no, Seth Rogen maybe, but
There you go.
Again, I've been called worse. All right, we'll go ahead and get started.
Too much hair.
Mark is like, hey, you're rolling. Come on here. All right. Well, we're sitting down here in November for our monthly chat with Iowa Agriculture Secretary Mike Naig here on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. Secretary, thanks so much for taking the time to visit.
You bet. Always great to catch up.
All right. So lots of things that we're going to be talking about here today. Of course, we're right now just getting ready for Thanksgiving here in a few days, and harvest is for the most part. I haven't seen too much going on that's left to be combined, maybe a little tillage. And hydrous is going to be hitting the gun here if Mother Nature starts turning the thermostat down. But where are we sitting right now with how things are going?
Yeah, you're spot on. Essentially harvest is done. There's always a few acres there, predominantly across southern Iowa that takes some time to come in. But, by and large, things are in. Of course, I did have a chance this past weekend. I was up to the farm and we did a little pheasant hunting, which was a lot of fun. And there were birds. Also made my way over to Orange City for a basketball game on Saturday night. So I had a chance to really get a nice shot up through Northwest Iowa and look at things. And, there was a fair amount of anhydrous going on. And of course, if you're any livestock producer knows there's a ton of work to be done after the combine is parked and a lot of cornstalk bales to be made and moved off of fields and, pits to be emptied and those types of things. And so I really thought that things looked like folks are really pushing hard to get things buttoned up here as we start to turn the weather a bit and maybe look at freezing the ground up. So I think things are really progressing nicely. And hydrous was one of those issues where folks, either because it was too wet or too warm, were holding off. And of course, that's good. And now that there's been a little window here that's opened up. But I have to say, and I talked to folks all across the state, and folks are still feel blessed that we are having the moisture and have gotten the moisture that we have. Of course, that sets us up even better for spring. So we needed that desperately. And even with all the rain we've got, I still know that there's places where the tile is not running, which just tells you everything you need to know about how dry that soil profile was.
We brought up nitrogen. It's been interesting in hydrous applications. You've got to get it below 50 to make it work and so it can go into the latency there and we're ready to go in spring. But as you said, it was been warm for so long and wet for so long. All of a sudden now it's starting to get where we can really go in earnest. And now with the thermostat going down, is that going to be a real worry that farmers may have to put that off till spring?
Yeah, definitely. And the good news is, and we're seeing a lot of interest in trying to push applications into the spring and into the crop year as well. And so, I think people are well positioned or have had experience with doing that. It does create a workload issue in the spring for retail. But again, I know there's a window here where folks are getting out and getting that in. The other thing that, we were really looking at was there was a lot of cover crop that was seeded and yet hadn't seen any moisture. And of course, it's great, as I, again, was traveling pretty extensively over the weekend to see that cover crop greening up and really get germinated here before, again, it turns cold. So that was a really nice little benefit too of seeing some moisture here, and then some moderate temperatures that allowed that to get up and get going.
And that again was Iowa Ag Secretary Mike Naig. We're going to take a short break and hear from our sponsor, the Iowa Soybean Association and the Soy Checkoff. And when we come back, we'll talk with the folks at agmarket.net to get the closing numbers. This is Ag Matters PM.
Iowa Soybean Association is driven to deliver for Iowa's 40,000 soybean farmers. We're proud to provide objective agronomic research, a helping hand with soil and water stewardship, and timely industry news powered by the Soybean Checkoff. Learn more at iasoybeans.com.
It's time now for the Ag Matters PM Closing Market Summary, your source for market analysis and settlement prices from the day's trade in Chicago, courtesy of the folks at agmarket.net. Welcome back to Ag Matters PM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. I'm Dustin Huffman, being joined now by Sam Trainor of agmarket.net. Just a couple days before the holiday break. And Sam, what did we see out of those grain markets today?
Well, we started off stronger in the soybean side of things, but then ultimately came down on both corn and soybeans, finished lower. However, the cattle markets were able to post a strong close today, which has been the trend for the week. Saw some news yesterday that had those cattle markets going a little bit higher.
All right, so let's start with the grains. What was it that kind of led the charge downward here today?
Yeah, so yesterday Trump announced that he will be placing a 25% tariff on China and Mexico on his first day in office, and an additional 10% tariff on any Chinese exports on top of what's already been talked about. So he's already talked about putting a 60% tariff on Chinese exports, and this would be an additional 10% on top of that. So it appears that the Chinese are starting to make purchases out of South America and shift their focus kind of away from the U.S. As these tariff talks kind of intensify and we get closer to that January 20th timeframe when Trump will be in office.
So obviously the market is worried about, I mean, we have a glut of supply, as we know from USDA, and the market's got to be worried about that demand. I mean, what could this do for us, and what kind of problem could this create?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, we're coming off the heels of a very large U.S. crop here, and looking at the soybean side of things, that's where most of the concern is, because we've got a big crop, and with China being the biggest buyer of U.S. soybeans, that's definitely of concern to not have any export sales there. So we're going to have to rely heavily on our domestic use, and we are seeing crush plants keep coming on board, and we're going to need to rely on that heavily here if China is absent on sales.
I know that's something we've talked about at length with the Export Council and stuff, is the fact that also finding and relying on those new markets, obviously a big deal. But you also mentioned some good news in the cattle markets. Let's go over to livestock then, Sam. What did we see that kind of gave that support?
Yeah, so yesterday there were some reports out of Mexico that some cattle herds were infected with a screwworm disease. That has the USDA has acted on that and put a temporary ban on export or imports, I should say, out of Mexico on any cattle, whether it be the cattle or hogs or anything of that sort. So it is temporary, but that news definitely sparked a rally yesterday. We were up sharply for a little bit. Today we were up over $3 in the feeder market. We closed just over $2.50 higher. The live cattle were 40 cents higher. So continued strength there, and it's just been the one bright spot here in these markets. As I said, the corn and beans have been lackluster at best, but the cattle markets here of late have continued to impress.
And then what did we see out of the hogs today? How'd they shape up?
More strength out of the hogs as well. They continue their strength higher. They were up over $1 today on the close, and it's been another market that has continued to show a lot of strength here. The funds continue to hold a long position there. We'll just continue to see that and see if that carries into and throughout the holiday season here, with Thanksgiving coming up here later this week. And then we're only 4 or 5 weeks away from Christmas, believe it or not.
You don't have to tell me. I have that shopping list already from the kids, so I definitely know that 4 weeks is not going to be that long. But if folks want to talk about some of the market strategies, where they maybe need to place some investments, where they need to market some of their grain for 25, what's a good way for them to get in touch with agmarket.net?
Best way would be to give us a call here in Normal, 1-800-779-1515. You can reach us, or you can go to our website at agmarket.net.
All right, Sam, well, we thank you so much for the insight. Have a good Thanksgiving, and we'll talk to you real soon.
All right. Very good. Thanks, Dustin.
That again was Sam Trainor of agmarket.net. Let's go ahead and take a look at the closing numbers on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network market screen. December corn was down 4 3/4 at $4.20 even. Soybeans down 2 1/4 at $9.83 1/2. Soybean meal down $5.60 at $2.8810. Soy oil up $1.38 at $42.59. Chicago wheat up 3 3/4 at $5.39 1/2. Kansas wheat up 4 cents at $5.50 1/2. Minneapolis spring wheat at press time 3 3/4 lower at $5.77 1/4. Oats up 2 3/4 at $3.47 3/4. Live cattle up 40 cents at $186.90. Feeders up $2.62 at $258.10. Lean hogs up $1.12 at $83.10. Pork cutouts unchanged at $92.30. And Class 3 milk up 40 cents at $18.81. And that's been a check of the closing numbers, and that brings us to the end of today's show. You can find all our content online at iowaagnet.com. You can also follow us on Facebook, X, and on our YouTube channel. And make sure you're subscribed and hit that bell icon so you're notified each time we put out a new video project. Also, don't forget about the Free Market Podcasts. They come with analysis right to your mobile device 3 times a day, openings, middays, and closings. You can find those where you get your favorite podcasts or online at iowaagnet.com, where you can also find replays of the Iowa Ag Matters program, Pods of Potential, Between the Pods, and even the Weekend Ag Matters program. From the iAir Studios in Des Moines, I'm Dustin Huffman. For Riley Smith, Andy Peterson, and Mark Magnuson, we thank you for watching. This has been Ag Matters PM.